Coming up on today's Airborne, the Small Airplane Revitalization Act passes the House. EAA will search for a new leader after AirVenture. And arrested for trespassing in the air? Welcome to Airborne on Aero TV. I'm Ashley Hale. One of the few GA positive stories to come out of Washington, D.C., the House of Representatives passed the Small Airplane Revitalization Act, a bill sponsored by Congressman Mike Pompeo, a Republican from Kansas, which would revitalize America's general aviation industry by updating outdated certification regulations. The bill directs the FAA to implement the FAA's Part 23 Aviation Rulemaking Committee recommendations by December 31st of 2015. Congressman Pompeo was thrilled at the passage, saying, quote, "By focusing on common sense regulatory reform, we can strengthen general aviation while not taking a dime from American taxpayers. That's a win-win. These new streamlined regulations will decrease costs, increase safety, and improve global competitiveness," end quote. There is a companion bill pending in the Senate, and Pompeo urged its quick passage. Well, there will be no announcement of a new president for the EAA at this year's AirVenture, because the organization has not yet initiated a search for a new leader. EAA board member Jack Pelton says that the board has delayed opening a nationwide search for the next president, who will be the fourth in the association's history, until after AirVenture is in the books for 2013. He said that's allowing the EAA to focus on the event. Pelton has served as board chairman since Rod Hightower resigned as president last year. His tenure was marked by reorganization of the management team that saw over 30 people let go from the organization early in 2012. Two of those managers have since returned. Pelton said that the EAA is still in a transition period from the family-led structure of its first 6 decades of existence to something that's more recognizable in corporate America. While no official timeline has been announced, the search for the next president is expected to begin quickly after AirVenture ends. A well-known National Geographic photographer has been arrested for, quote, trespassing in the air. George Steinmetz of Glen Ridge, New Jersey, while working on an assignment for National Geographic, was operating a paraglider over a feedlot that contained thousands of cattle in Finney County, Kansas. He was accompanied by Wei Zhang of Beijing, China, a paraglider instructor who was driving an SUV in support of the flight. According to HutchNews.com in Hutchinson, Kansas, Steinmetz was working on a story for National Geographic when the incident occurred. He and Zhang were originally arrested for trespassing on the feedlot property, even though they had moved off the property by the time the authorities arrived. While each paid a $270 bond and were released the same day, the incident raised a larger question of how trespassing in the air is defined. Kansas Livestock Association attorney Aaron Popelka thinks that Kansas law does not define how far up property rights extend, but that a landowner's rights do extend to the airspace above their property. And while federal law allows overflights for air travel, Steinmetz was not making an overflight for travel purposes. National Geographic said it will assist in any necessary defense. The Airbus A350 XWB is expected to enter service in the second half of 2014, and so far, testing is on schedule with the completion of 92 flight tests since its first flight. During the first 4 weeks of the flight test campaign, 10 Airbus experimental test pilots have flown MSN-1 and have collectively put the aircraft through its paces to get to know its handling qualities and behavior. This early phase of test flights has resulted in the clearance of the entire flight envelope and initial testing of all key systems. The A350 MSN-1 will now undergo routine maintenance and upgrades of its flight test installation to ready it for the second phase of the flight test campaign, which will start in August, while the design office will analyze the results of these initial flight tests. The A350 XWB flight test campaign will total around 2,500 flight hours with a fleet of 5 development aircraft. You're watching Airborne, more in a moment.
Since its inception, Redbird Flight Simulations has been dedicated to developing new training technologies and processes in an ongoing effort to make aviation safer, more affordable, and more accessible. Consider Redbird's flagship flight training device, the FMX, a superior quality, full-motion, feature-rich advanced aviation training device priced with real-world flight training organizations in mind. With standard features that are anything but standard, such as wraparound visuals, a fully enclosed cockpit, quick change configurations, scenario-based training compatibility, and of course, an electric motion platform, the FMX serves up a level of realism that is simply unavailable in other training devices on the market. For more information on Redbird flight simulations, the Redbird FMX, and Redbird's entire line of flight training devices, visit www.redbirdflightsimulations.com.
Welcome back. If you'd like to suggest a story for Airborne, Aero TV, our website, or a podcast, drop us an email to news-spy@aero-news.net. ANN's editor-in-chief Jim Campbell has just announced the undertaking of a new project to help rebuild sport aviation. A 21st century update of the book that inspired him to reach for the sky, a publication called The Complete Book of Sky Sports by Len Emrich, which was published 30 years ago. The 3-volume ebook, which will also be available in printed hard copy later in 2014, will be titled Aerosports, because of its relation to us, the Aero News Network. Where the original publication covered some 5 distinct disciplines, Aerosports will document the basics of all kinds of aviation activities, such as model aviation and ultralight flying. It will then progress to cover some 15 or 16 areas we've identified as unique sport and general aviation activities that have the potential to attract new pilots. We'll be releasing advanced order information via an online order site in a few days. But if you can't wait, we welcome your pre-orders by mail. For the ebook, send us your full name, address, email, payment, and your preference of either MOBI or EPUB formats. Aerosports will be released in 3 volumes later in the year, with each new volume following the previous 60 to 90 days until complete. The price is $29.95. Pre-orders may be submitted to Aero-News Network at P.O. Box 3773, St. Augustine, Florida 32085. The NTSB has released the first of 5 short videos, each featuring an NTSB investigator highlighting a particular area of general aviation safety associated with the majority of GA accidents. Every year, the NTSB investigates about 1,500 preventable GA accidents that kill about 475 people, pilots and the family members and friends traveling with them. Most of these crashes involve a similar set of circumstances, conditions, and decision-making that leads to fatal outcomes. In March, the NTSB issued 5 safety alert bulletins to highlight these areas and provide strategies and resources to better identify and reduce risk for those in the GA community. The NTSB has created a short video, only 3 to 5 minutes, on each of the 5 safety alert topics. The videos feature NTSB investigators sharing their perspectives as both GA pilots and aviation safety professionals on how both pilots and mechanics can more effectively manage the risk associated with GA flying. The first of the videos is your aircraft talking to you? Listen. It's available now on YouTube, and the 4 remaining video safety alerts will be released throughout the month of July. It's Friday, and no doubt that you're wondering just what's on Jim Campbell's mind today. Well, it's a simple but costly matter of integrity. Here's ANN's editor-in-chief with this week's Barnstorming.
Thanks, Ashley, and hi, folks. By the time you see this, I should be most of my way to Oshkosh. We're in the process of setting up the portable office, actually not a portable office anymore. We're actually installing a permanent office in the Media Mall, about 200 yards north of the control tower and just to the west of the press headquarters in the Media Mall area at Oshkosh. And we're thrilled to be able to vote with our dollars and our commitment to the Oshkosh experience, to the EA experience, to the AirVenture experience, and most importantly, to the sport aviation community. We are here to stay because you're here to stay, and we need to make investments in each other to prove how committed we are to the future of the sport aviation world. That being said, let me talk to you about something that really shook up my confidence in the whole aviation world over the last 2 years. I did a lot of business a long time ago with Cirrus Aircraft, primarily because I was doing business with a man by the name of Alan Klattmeyer, a man whose integrity has been proven to me time and time and time again, even when he could have profited quite greatly by not keeping his word or not being honest with me. Alan Klattmeyer is an honest man. Unfortunately, being an honest man, I think, is one of the reasons why ultimately Cirrus kicked him to the curb. Brent Waters took over. Ultimately, later on, his own brother took over, threw his own brother under the bus, and a number of other folks have taken their places in Cirrus, and created a company that we've had a lot of problems with over the last 2 years. We wrote stories about a lot of inconsistencies, a lot of errant statements, a lot of things that we consider to be false based on the information that we had. They didn't like the stories. They got very arrogant, very adamant about wanting us to change things, wanting us to retract things, and we wouldn't do it because the truth wouldn't let us. It got ugly. When we finally released the information that Cirrus was negotiating with the Chinese, all hell broke loose. We got threatened. They canceled the contracts. They canceled the warranty to my airplane. And to make an exceedingly long story short, they stopped paying us on an advertising contract we'd had for quite some time. At that point, already owing us well over $100,000 if you take a look at the statement at the time, and ultimately going on to being quite a bit more than that. We got hurt. Ultimately got involved in a legal skirmish, which should have been settled last year. One of their vice presidents even came up to me and shook my hand, and we had an agreement. It wasn't one that I was that happy with. It wasn't one that they were that happy with. But when both sides aren't that happy, I guess it's an effective compromise. We shook hands, and then they broke the deal. They changed terms. And the terms weren't so bad that they changed, but the problem is that they started adding new terms. They wanted control over what I wrote. They wanted me to retract stories. They wanted me to not mention previous stories that I had done and stories I would do in the future. They wanted me, they wanted to control the negativity that occasionally occurs when you do truthful stories about a company that's not in the best shape in the world. Ultimately, couldn't do it. And though we did finally settle to a point where we were able to survive the mess, and the survival in this particular case was mostly because the legal expenses were incredible. Cirrus spent every possible dollar, it seemed, to put us in the dirt and put us out of business. And for some reason or another, they were very happy to spend an awful lot of money damaging us. But they slipped up. We were able to get a settlement out of it. And at the same time, I have to tell you that if I'd made the settlement over a year ago that we shook the hands on, I'd be better part of $500,000 ahead of where I am now. But my integrity, my honesty, my commitment to you means more than nearly $500,000 that I would have been ahead. I got to tell you, it's tough. It hurt us a lot. We will recover. We recover very nicely, but from all kinds of things. Make no mistake. My commitment to you is total. I will not lie to you, and not even the loss of nearly $500,000 will even make me think twice about lying to you. I don't trust Cirrus. I won't own a Cirrus ever again. I won't have anything to do with the company. It's a fine product and a fine airplane. I love it to death. I don't trust the company, and I've been lied to so many times by them I lost count. I would strongly suggest whatever business that you do in any way with any company in the GA world, that you do it carefully, that you look for references, that you look for the history, and that you do so very carefully, because when it goes wrong, it's not a pretty thing at all. In the meantime, our head is held high, our integrity is intact, and nobody, but nobody, not even for nearly $500,000, could force us to lie to you or to create any kind of false representation. I believe in you. I hope you believe in us. And that's the way we intend to keep it. For the Aero News Network, Airborne and Aero TV, I'm Jim Campbell.
Well, let's be honest here. It's been decades since airplane food has won any 5-star, Michelin, or other gourmet awards. But that hasn't stopped a pair of entrepreneurs working to turn a decommissioned DC-7 airliner into an airport restaurant in New Smyrna Beach, Florida. The DC-7 grill was conceived by brothers Danny and Skip Perna, who had the airplane shipped from South Florida to New Smyrna Beach Municipal Airport in June of 2012. And the move was televised as part of the A&E reality series Shipping Wars. The brothers had hoped for a New Year's Day grand opening, but they ran into some issues. The most recent setback was a failure to resubmit a site plan to the city's Plan Review Committee in the specified 120-day time frame. And let's face it, transforming a former airliner into a 50-seat cafe does bring some unique issues of its own. The brothers said they are not ready to set a new opening date for the DC-7 grill, but that once they get final approval from the city, they have 4 to 5 months of additional work before it's ready to open. Well, that's our program. Remember, you can get comprehensive real-time 24/7 coverage of the latest aviation and aerospace stories anytime at aero-news.net. I'm Ashley Hale. Thanks for watching.